Hey folks, the RQ Cosmopolitan here. Japan announced their 2026 World Baseball Classic roster today, so let's talk about it. We have 29 of the 30 players now confirmed. One more will be finalized next week. We assume that that is some logistical issues with an MLB player, probably Masataka Yoshida. Can't say for sure, but if he is denied, then maybe we bring in another player from MPB. But as of now, we got 21 players from Nippon Professional Baseball and 8 from Major League Baseball. So let's begin with the pitching. How will manager Hirokazu Ibata go about using these 14 guys if you include Shohei Ohtani? And Ohtani is obviously the wild card here, right? How is he planning to utilize himself is really the biggest question. Like, how does he want to go about this tournament? In 2023, he kind of was a hybrid. He had started the opening game against China, then he started in the quarterfinals against Italy. Then the Angels apparently put some inning cap on him for the rest of this tournament, and he only ended up coming in relief, but that ended up being a very high leverage inning to get the final 3 outs against Team USA in the finals, obviously striking out Mike Trout to end it. So that's kind of what I believe will happen with Ohtani again, is he's going to be used in multiple roles. Obviously, back in 2023, he was coming off a full healthy season. This was right before he got hurt, of course. And now, with multiple surgeries, plus last year he was really heavily kind of load managed. Not, easy to say just like the usage rate that he's going to have for this tournament. If he really only wants to pitch in relief in short bursts, for instance, that's totally fine. He could be the closer while also DHing. But as of now, I do think he joins the rotation alongside his, teammate Yoshinobu Yamamoto, World Series MVP. Big to get him confirmed today because obviously we knew that he was committed to play for Japan, but we weren't exactly sure what was happening behind the scenes in terms of, were the Dodgers not fully on board with him participating after throwing that many innings in the postseason, etc. But now all those worries are gone. He will be the ace of this staff. After that, it does get a little bit difficult, though, and that's where this team kind of differs from the 2023 edition, because back then you had Ohtani and Yu Darvish at the top, followed by a peak Roki Sasaki. I mean, this is when he had that, absolute demon splitter going with his unicorn fastball, and he was basically like a baby Jacob deGrom. Plus, Shota Imanaga was, coming off a good year and then going into a 2023 campaign in which he had a 30% strikeout rate, propelled that into an MLB deal. Not to mention Yamamoto being the number 4 after winning multiple Sawamuras and MVPs, and obviously was, well on his way to becoming a historic great. So this time, instead, they have, Yusei Kikuchi, who has had his ups and downs in MLB. Lately he's been all right. He was pretty good in the first half in 2025, not so much in the second half. Definitely still does have flashes of being, a good pitcher, though. 34, obviously, so a little bit on the older end. You include him with the expectation that he's going to be a starter, so he's the number 3. And then you get Tomoyuki Sugano, who is the oldest on this team at 36. He kind of plays the Darvish role from 23, I suppose, as the veteran leader, mentoring some of the younger players. Obviously, as a Yomiuri franchise icon, they look up to him. But it's a little bit worrying given that in the second half of 2025, in his debut MLB season, he was just very bad. ERA over 6, couldn't control the long ball. The stuff just really did not translate. Obviously, in terms of pitchability, IQ, command, I still think Sugano is very good. If he came back to MPB, he would be a top pitcher, but apparently he still wants to sign with an MLB team. He's a free agent right now. We'll see what comes of that. But I would say, Yamamoto and Kikuchi are obviously locks for this rotation. Ohtani, depending on what he wants to do, would be a lock. And then Sugano, because they included him, I just have to assume he will start, even though I would prefer basically anybody else, like all the MPB top, young starters. Like I would prefer them over Sugano, but I just don't think that's how Ibata will utilize them. Then you get Hiromi Ito. And Hiromi Ito is coming off a Sawamura Award. He's actually the first to win the Sawamura Award since Yamamoto. Led MPB in innings and strikeouts. He's kind of the protege to Yu Darvish, I always say. 10 plus pitches, excellent feel for spin, very cerebral, smart, could be an MLB in the near future. He, to me, is the front runner here out of the MPB guys to actually get a start, because there's only 4 games in the pool stage, so technically only need 4 starters, but if Japan does go deeper, then you kind of need 5. So that's where, Ito could slot in. Now, what I've called followers here are, more so traditional starters who in a tournament like this could be used for long relief. Coming in, there is a pitch limit in the WBC, so after the starter goes, say, 4 or 5, the follower comes in and gives you length. He can give you 2 to 4 innings. As well as just like piggybacking off of each other is also a possibility. Like Miyagi did that with Roki Sasaki against Czech Republic in 23. Now, Miyagi could very well start as well, much like Ito. I mean, out of the guys that were included, I do think these are the 2 best starters in Japan. I think Shinpei Yamashita, in terms of talent, is above them, but, for whatever reason, I guess injury is a big part of it. He was not selected for this team. Everyone else here, Ryuhei Sotani, Atsuki Taneichi, Hiroto Takahashi, and Koki Kitayama, they are, I think, more of your traditional follower types. The role that Keiji Takahashi, Shosei Togo, these types of players played in the last tournament, where, again, the starter gives you 4 or 5, and then they can come in and give you 2 or 3. Now, Takahashi, still the youngest player on this roster. He was the youngest last time as well, coming off a bit of a down year where he was only around league average in terms of like run prevention. The year before that, though, he did have a 1.38 ERA, just one of the best pitchers in MPB. Still throws very hard, got that splinker. Takahashi, his inclusion, I'm actually very happy that they went with Takahashi and Kitayama as opposed to, say, Kodai Senga. Now, granted, I don't know what his status was, but given Senga's injury history and just like we know what we're going to get out of him, I think it's better for the future of this team, of the national team, to go for some of these young guns like Takahashi and Kitayama, who, Ito's the ace of the fighters, but Kitayama's coming off a year where he had a sub-2 ERA and was very dominant. He's also pitched in multiple roles, opener, reliever, and now a starter, obviously. Taneichi in the second half there for Lotte had a 33% strikeout rate, which was the best in MPB. Had a 15 strikeout game with 42 whiffs in the second to last start of the season as well. So he, after struggling in the first half, just completely went off down the final stretch and propelled himself onto this team. Very much deserved. And Sotani, I was actually pleasantly surprised he was included, because surface level numbers last year were not good. It was an ERA over 4, which in dead ball MPB, I mean, that's almost like putting up a 5 in MLB. But you look beneath the surface and he's still got really good stuff, still very young. He was one of my top prospects just a couple of years ago. I'm very happy they went with 2 southpaws from Oryx. And then the rest of these guys are your more, traditional 1-inning relievers, or a guy that can even come in the middle of an inning and just get you 1 out, put out a rally, that kind of thing. Yuki Matsui, of course, for the San Diego Padres, he's been a solid, MLB reliever. But back when he was in MPB for the Rakuten Eagles, I mean, he was one of the 1 or 2 best closers in the game for a very long time, and he struggled to adjust to the MLB ball back in 2023, but now that he has a few years under his belt there with the MLB ball, with the pitch clock, which, I mean, for him is a big issue because he takes so much time between pitches, I think he's going to be good in this tournament. He is one of the front runners to potentially be the closer here. Again, depends on what Otani's doing. Like late in the tournament, I imagine he closes, but early on you could have Matsui, you could also have Kaimataira, and you could also have Taisei. These guys could kind of share the closer role. Kaimataira coming off a year where he was tied for the Pacific League lead in saves. He is getting stretched out again as a starter this upcoming season. This is the second time he's done that. Last WBC, he declined to participate because he was, going to convert and he wanted to dedicate all his efforts into that. But now that he's done that once already, he is comfortable to participate. And yeah, I think he should be a high octane reliever, pump high 90s. He very much is kind of like a finesse pitcher that just happens to throw gas. I mean, just because he has so many pitches, he's so cerebral, he has a lot of pitch shapes. He's capable of being so many different things. He's so dynamic. But again, at a tournament like this, I think his best role will be as, max effort reliever. Taisei, I think, is going to be really fun to pair with Yuki Matsui, mostly because he is obviously right-handed from a very low kind of sidearm slot, has the running fastball as well as kind of the sweeper and splitter off of it, whereas Matsui is lefty, very high slot. Yeah, that could give hitters a lot of fits if you pair those arm angles together. And then Kaimataro with that kind of, flat VAA. I mean, that's a really good group of guys they have here. And then Yuki Matsumoto and Daichi Ishii, I see them as more of the 6th, 7th, 8th inning type firemen. Matsumoto, the setup man for the SoftBank Hawks, part of that three-headed dragon there that was played an instrumental role in helping the Hawks win the Japan Series last year. He was the setup man there, and he has obviously done the role in big games and playoffs and stuff for a long time. I thought they might go for, their closer, Kazuki Sugiyama, or the 7th inning guy, Koya Fuji, who has big stuff, big splitter, big fastball. I kind of thought, those would be the guys that Japan leans towards. But instead, it is Matsumoto, who I think doesn't have the same upside, but I guess he's safer, better in terms of control, command, stuff like that. Daichi Ishii coming off a year with a 0.17 ERA, 50 straight consecutive scoreless appearances. I mean, just record-breaking stuff there for the Tigers. Did get clipped in the Japan Series by Yuki Yanagita there when they got eliminated, but you just had to include him after a year like that. Very good splitter as well. So again, I think the closer role early in the tournament could be between Matsui, Taira, Taisei, with Otani later on, if they are fortunate enough to make it to the semifinals and finals again, that's where you could really see, Otani take over the ninth. All right, position players. So catchers, it's Seishiro Sakamoto for the Hanshin Tigers, and I think he will be the primary guy. And then you have Kenya Wakatsuki as the backup / I do think they will lean on him when the Oryx pitchers are out there, right? So when you have Yamamoto, when you have Miyagi, when you have Sotani, I mean, Wakatsuki's built so much rapport with them over the years that he does make sense to be behind the plate for when those guys are out there. He also, I think, is a better bat than Sakamoto. He's a good blocker, has a pretty good arm, but I think he is a bit more of the offense first option, whereas Sakamoto is really pure defense. I mean, he was good as a hitter last year, mostly because he just was patient and kind of feisty up there and drew a lot of walks. But historically, he's not a good hitter. I mean, he is really there purely for defense. Elite framer. He won the Fielding Bible Award. Good at blocking, good at game calling, all of that. I don't mind kind of offensively punting at catcher if you're going to get elite defense, and Sakamoto does give you that. What I do kind of mind is the fact that the third string is Yuhei Nakamura, who, look, in terms of his leadership skills, in terms of the fact that he's like a transition player from the 23 team, he obviously caught the final out for with Otani on the mound, which is impressive because he had never caught Otani before and all that. He was on the November squad for the exhibitions as well. I understand why he's there, but this spot could have been like Shogo Sakakura, who, was on the all-world team at the Premier 12, has a lot of power upside. It could have been Yudai Yamamoto, who's good on both sides of the ball. It could have been Yukinori Kishida, who had, the best OPS among catchers last year. It does, make me, scratch my head a little bit that they're going for, kind of a trio of guys that just don't have that much in the way of offensive upside. Again, Wakatsuki and Sakamoto are not bad at this point, but you shouldn't really expect much from them in this tournament. And then Nakamura, certainly, I mean, he will catch a few innings at most, I think. He's mostly there as a bench presence. We move on to the infield. You do have Munetaka Murakami, obviously. The big thing with him is that first year entering MLB, obviously, it's going to be kind of a big deal to miss spring training because he is one of these guys that might struggle early on, right, to adjust with all his swing and miss issues. But another part of this equation is that first base. He is going to be playing first base full time for the first time in a long time. I mean, he did it very early on. I want to say 2020, he played a lot of first base for the Swallows, but ever since then, he has been at the hot corner. Expects to be more of a first base DH type long term with the White Sox, and I think Ibata is going to play him there for this tournament. Last WBC, he was flipped with Okamoto. Kazuma Okamoto, who, you know, these two hit the free agency at the same time, both went to MLB. Okamoto signing with the Blue Jays. Last time he was the first baseman. You know, really did a good job to win that job from Hotaka Yamakawa, who was the favorite. He was coming off a much better 2022. Okamoto had a bit of a down 2022 season. But, you know, he obviously made it count because he homered in the quarterfinal. He almost homered in the semifinal. Randy Arozarena robbed him, and then he homered again in the final. So it was a great tournament for Okamoto. At this point in time, though, he is the better defender at third base. So that's how I think it will play out. I mean, Ibata's already kind of hinted at this. It would be Murakami at first, and then Okamoto on the other side. Second base is going to be Shugo Maki for the Yokohama DNA Bay Stars. Kind of the epitome of consistency, right? 850 OPS, 20 to 25 bombs every year. Dude's an absolute beast. And in terms of his second base defense, that's where, you know, he's a little bit weak. He's slightly below average. I mean, he's not bad by any means. He's gotten a little bit better since early in his career. But at this point in time, with Tetsuro Yamada gone, I mean, you know, he's still playing, but just is a shadow of his former self. Ryosuke Kikuchi was Japan's like longtime second baseman before that. This is the Shugo Maki era now for Samurai Japan, and I mean, this guy plays a lot of baseball. I mean, Ibata has leaned on him so many times in these tournaments, like the Premier 12, and anytime they would play like an exhibition, he would be there. Maki clearly likes to play for the national team, and he's going to be very important to lengthen the lineup, because obviously when you have all these MLB sluggers hitting at the top, Maki is going to be sliding down a little bit lower, which I guess maybe that contributed to the fact that Ibata batted him 6th for the Premier 12 as well, even though he was like clearly the best bat on the roster at the time. Like, maybe the idea behind that was like, oh, let's get him comfortable hitting back there. Although he said that it was for RBI opportunities, which doesn't really make sense. And then the backup here would be Taisei Makihara. I mean, Makihara is really here as a pure utility man, because the dude can play absolutely anywhere. He can also flat out fly very fast, but he does kind of fill out this roster as more of as a very good defensive second baseman who could back up Maki. Shortstop is kind of weird. I must say this is the one position that I really don't know what Ibata was going for. I can try to spin this in a positive way, but I just think there were better options here. So the way to look at this favorably is that, hey, Kaito Kozono, this is a dynamic player that gives you a little different flavor from your, Murakami's and Okamoto's. He's a pure bat-to-ball guy, not much in the way of power, although he did hit a few homers at the Premier 12. He is this like sub 10% K rate guy, feisty, just a guy that can hit a single and keep the line moving. But the more pressing issue here to me is not that he was included, because look, if he was playing like a Taisei Makihara role, and both these guys did win the batting title in their respective leagues, I should point out, Makihara Pacific League, Kozono Central League, I wouldn't mind it as much if he was like a bench piece, obviously, and he does have experience at the international level, but it's the fact that he's going to be playing shortstop, and Kozono is not a good shortstop. He's not really even a good second baseman or a third baseman. Consistently ranks very poorly among defensive metrics. And I mean, up until recently, Masaya Yano was the shortstop for the Hiroshima Carp. It's just that he's so bad with the stick in his hands that Kozono kind of took over. And I do think Kozono can perform at a tournament like this. Certainly against, early round competition, he's not going to have any issues there. I do wonder how his game will translate versus MLB pitching, but I just don't really understand why you pair him with Sosuke Genda. The idea behind it would be Kozono can start early in the game, spray around the ball, give you a lot of hits, and then Genda, the veteran, the Gold Glove winner, he comes in late for defense. But Genda last year was just not very good, to be quite honest with you. I mean, it was the worst year of his career, sub 600 OPS. Defense is still good, don't get me wrong, but it's not like the best in the league anymore. His teammate Natsuo Takizawa gets that title. He won the Fielding Bible Defensive Player of the Year, moving between second and short. And you also had Yuta Izuguchi for the Yomiuri Giants, and I just don't know why Izuguchi wasn't selected. I mean, if you want to say, they want a contact hitter who can hit for average and is not like your traditional slugger, well, Izuguchi kind of did a better job of that than Kozono. And he plays better defense, up-and-coming star there for the Giants. I also wouldn't have minded if they went for, say, Kotaro Kuribayashi or Isami Nomura, who have a bit more power upside. If you pair him with like Genda, that makes a little bit more sense because there you have like a righty-lefty platoon at least. This is two lefty hitters, both, kind of contact slap types. One is a good defender, but on the way out. The other still very young, I guess on the way up, but I don't really see him making long-term improvements at shortstop. So again, shortstop to me is very questionable. I'm not going to just outright say it's not going to work because, again, at a short tournament like this, you just have a few good games and it's like you're a cult hero at that point. But I don't understand why Yuta Izuguchi wasn't even considered. I mean, he wasn't even on the November team, for God's sake. We move on to the outfield, and left field should be Seiya Suzuki. Seiya Suzuki, coming off a couple of really good years there with the Chicago Cubs. I know he's been DHing a little bit more of late. Not the best defender anymore, but, you still stick him out there and he's not going to embarrass himself, obviously. And then the interesting part becomes how the rest of this puzzle, kind of works out, because I think left is a lock for Suzuki. I mean, he could play right, but put it this way, he's going to play one of the corners. But what happens with Teruaki Sato, Kensuke Kondo, and then, Masataka Yoshida, who is the guy I expect to be the 30th and final player selected. If it's not him, then I guess you could add an MPB player. Like, I would love if they went for Chusei Manami or Yuki Yanagita. Could also just be like, another defense speed piece like a Isobata or Okabayashi. But to me, the fact that they weren't able to announce the final roster today when it was supposed to be the day they finalize everything, that suggests that there's some, jam on the logistical side that is preventing Masataka Yoshida from being approved. So hopefully, for Ibata's sake, he is. And then, I don't know, I don't think you have Seiya Suzuki and Yoshida platoon. That wouldn't really make much sense. So maybe at that point, he wants both of the MLB players to start. Like maybe he wants Yoshida in left and Seiya Suzuki in right. I don't know. I think right field, though, the best option is Sato or Kondo. And this, to me, is a complete toss-up. Do you want the power upside or do you want the stability in the floor? Because Sato's coming off a year where he hit 40 homers. He led all of MPB in basically every statistical category, at least among qualifiers. Okamoto and Murakami being a little bit better in general. But they didn't play as many games. Sato played the full year, was an absolute beast, won MVP, and he plays third base during the regular season. He's done that for multiple years in a row and will be doing it again in 2026. But he has experience playing right field, and honestly, I think he's more of a natural fit in right field. Like when he eventually gets posted to MLB, I think teams will view him as more of a, outfield type because he's athletic, he has good arm. I thought with Hanshin drafting Tateishi, actually, it would have made sense to just slot Tateishi at third and move Sato back into the outfield, but that's not what they're doing. So that does make it a little bit awkward. Like, is Sato just the third base backup, or is he actually going to get some run in the outfield? I think he will get a chance in the outfield. But Kondo, on the other hand, this is a guy that's posted a 400 plus OBP for a decade straight, and he hit in front of Ohtani at the 23 WBC, and he was awesome, and he won the MVP just 2 years ago, was injured for a lot of last year, unfortunately, has this lingering back issue, but that maybe helps him from the perspective that he has actually played this role of a super pinch hitter before, because there are times where, say, the Hawks are, playing without a DH in interleague or the playoffs, and he isn't able to play the field because of the injury, so he is a pinch hitter. I mean, he did that at one point in the Japan series. So he does have experience doing that. He obviously has a crazy good hit tool. He's the type of guy that you can guarantee is going to give you a good at-bat. He can take a walk. A little bit, I don't want to say redundant if there's Masataka Yoshida and Kondo, because, you can't ever have too many, good hitters. But it is kind of similar profiles in terms of, great hit tool, lefty bat, corner outfield, good but not elite power, that kind of thing. So again, I'm very curious, what comes of the situation if they are rostering Suzuki, Kondo, Sato, and Yoshida. That's kind of like 4 players for only 2 spots. But then you get to center field, and center field is another one that's a little bit difficult to project because they've only rostered one real center fielder, and that is Ukyo Shuto, who's an elite defender, just signed a big contract extension there. He's going to be a Hawk for life, more than likely. Also the fastest player in the league, probably the fastest player in the entire WBC. There's going to be some competition for him there, but he was obviously instrumental when pinch running for Yoshida in the last semifinals with Murakami's 2-run double. That's why I think, he does kind of feel more like a bench piece. He is competent with the bat in his hands, but not really against the best of the best in the world. I think he's more suited for just being like a MPB table setter, slap hitting, and just using his legs. He profiles more like a defensive replacement / pinch runner for this tournament, as does Makihara, to be honest. These are both utility types. And that would mean Shota Morishita, who is a right fielder in MPB with the Hanshin Tigers, he would be the center fielder. Now, last time they had Lars Nootbaar. He wasn't really an option this time because he is seemingly hurt. But Morishita has played a little bit of center, 1 or 2 years ago. Didn't do it at all in 2025, but he's athletic enough to do it. I mean, he rated as an above average right fielder last year. So I think you just plug him into center and hope for the best. He's not going to look like a complete clown out there. He's definitely going to be able to do an okay job. And if he does struggle, or if you need some, late game help, then that's where Shuto comes in, or even Makihara, right? In terms of the offensive upside, being able to squeeze Morishita in here is huge, because in many ways, Morishita has been trending like the second coming of Seiya Suzuki. Suzuki, cleanup at the 2019 Premier 12, the very next Premier 12, 2024, Morishita was the cleanup hitter. They're both, corner outfield types, kind of similar swing profiles, just, because it's currently dead ball era, maybe the raw stats for Morishita don't immediately jump out at you, but among qualifiers, Morishita was the second best hitter in MPB last year, right after Sato. And I actually talked to him at the Premier 12, and when I asked him a question about the differences he sees between facing a Japanese pitcher versus an American pitcher, he gave me a very detailed response about the kind of mechanical differences he sees out of, foreign pitchers as opposed to, domestic guys he sees in MPB. And I think he is very much a player that has been just waiting for this opportunity to play at the international stage. And I think he's going to shine. I mean, he's another guy that could blossom into a future MLB star. Just a lot of, things to like with the all-around bat. Doesn't strike out a lot, has good pop, and is continuing to get better. So I think he will be the center fielder. And then it's kind of a little bit funky when you have, two hunching players both in the outfield, but both playing positions that they normally don't during the regular season. But again, you could flop these guys and I don't care. If you want Kondo in right and Sato's like, the late game pinch hitter, then that's fine too. The important part is that they do have just an overflow of these, really good outfield hitters, because you're going to need to pinch hit at some point for Sakamoto or Wakatsuki, right? Like, you're going to need to pinch hit for these guys. Even, I don't think they're going to pinch hit for, like, Kozono in every situation, but you could. Makihara might be a guy that comes into, like, pinch bunt. We've seen Ibata do this. Like, God forbid he does that for a good hitter. Like, imagine in a big spot, like, Maki's up and Ibata says, nope, I want Makihara in there to bunt the guy over instead of driving in runs. Very much possible. But again, I think this is a really good roster. Is it better than the 2023 team? It's debatable. I would say it's about the same. I think the offense is a little bit better. You think about 2023, you had Yamada and Maki both at second base. So that's a little bit different. First base and third base are the same. Again, just flip the positions defensively. Shortstop was Genda, but he was better at the time. So, infield's basically the exact same. Outfield, Suzuki was supposed to be there in 23, but he got hurt in spring, so he wasn't. So having him, that by itself makes you better. And then, center field, swapping Morishita with Nootbaar. I don't know about the glove, but I would say offensively that's an upgrade. Morishita has more upside than Newt, as much as I like Newt. And then in the corner, last time it was Yoshida. This time you have a choice of Yoshida or Sato or Kondo. So it's just like, it's even better. And then, the catchers, last time you had Takuya Kai, Yuhei Nakamura, Takumi Oshiro. I think Oshiro was the best out of the three, but he barely played. It was mostly Kai and Nakamura, mostly Nakamura by the end. That's, pretty much a side grade with these guys. I think Sakamoto is certainly a much better defender than anyone they've had before. But in terms of like what you're going to get out of the hitting, it's pretty much the same. So the hitting, I would say overall, the position player core, it's a little bit better. But then the pitching is slightly worse, certainly in the rotation, because before you had peak Roki Sasaki, who, looked like baby Jacob deGrom at the time. He's not going to be there anymore. You had Shota Imanaga, who was entering one of his best years. You had, Yu Darvish still. Otani was healthier. Yamamoto was, right in the middle of his absolute peak, which he still is now, to be fair. But I just think like the back end was a little bit stronger back in 23. Bullpen is basically the same though. Like, I probably prefer, a Tanaichi type to like a Shosei Togo anyway. Sotani versus Keiji Takahashi back then is like pretty similar. The back end bullpen guys are not all that much, different either. Like Daichi Ishii versus like Atsuki Yuasa at their best. It's like, it's pretty close. I would say this group might even be a little bit better in that regard, but just because you don't have monster Roki, you don't have Tatsuya Imai, you don't have Shunpeita Yamashita, this group could have been like 20% better. So I guess I'm just kind of viewing it through that lens, that it's worse than it could have been. But still a very good team, still, should be right there with USA and Dominican Republic. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.